All right, welcome everyone. As you're coming in. Yeah, all right, we've got some people joining us. All right, welcome everybody. Hello. It's nice to see you all. We'll give it another minute as people show up. We've got a lot to talk about during our session, so we're really excited. Okay, I think we've got people are starting to slow down a little bit. People will continue to join, I think, as we go along. But I want to make sure we get things kicked off. But before we get into this, I want to make sure that we cover a few things. You all will see the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Please interact with us. We are anxious to get your questions. Make sure this is interactive and engaging, and make sure that you come away with this understanding our privacy application a little bit better. This is going to be being recorded, so please be aware of that. And we've got a couple more people joining us, but I think we'll go ahead and get started. All right, thank you all. I am here with Pramod, and we're here to talk about learning about privacy management, which we're extremely excited about. Pramod, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Quite excited to talk to you all. I'm Pramod Chandra, part of product management. I handle privacy management within ServiceNow. And I'm glad to be here and talking about the new enhancements that you have released just very recently as part of our San Diego release. So quite excited to talk to you all.
Wonderful. And I'm Teresa Law, Director of Product Marketing. And I want to tell you a little bit about some of the cool things that's coming up. So in case you missed it, it's out on the YouTube right now on our Ask the Experts channel. I will be putting a link to that channel in our chat here coming up, but we just did our Learn About Risk Management webinar, and that was really exciting, full hour of information. Today we're talking about privacy management. Next week we'll be talking about vendor risk management, and we're lucky enough to have one of our integration partners join us, EcoVadis. We are going to be talking about policy and compliance management at the end of next week. And then the week after, we are scheduling our business continuity management webinar. So be on the lookout for that. You can find all of these on our community. And after the webinar, not only is the recording up on YouTube, but it's also up on the community in the link to the event that you no doubt found this information on for this webinar. So I think without further ado, I want to see some of the product. So Pramod, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Teresa, definitely. I'm going to share my screen and then we'll get started. Yeah. So as part of today's agenda, we'll be looking at what is that we have released as part of San Diego release, right, in the privacy management. However, a lot of things from a highlights point of view. Rather than going line by line, I directly get into the demo and I'll talk about functionalities. But before we jump into the demo, what happened to the overall solution overview, or how the entire solution overview got enhanced based on the new release that we just came out with, right, is what I wanted to show you. And then with that context, we will get into the specifics of the enhancements that we have as part of our San Diego release. As you see here, this is the privacy management overview. And the changes that primarily came in as part of this particular release is in integration with risk management, right? Advanced risk management to perform or to understand risk posture in the privacy aspects as such that you're dealing with in your organization. And if we just go through this particular flow, on the left, we start with the libraries, right? It helps you set up your privacy assessments, be it a privacy impact assessment or a legitimate assessment or a data transfer related specific assessments, right? And risk assessments, as well as maintaining your personal data repositories as part of your as part of the kind of data that you're kind of processing within your organization. All of such repositories can be maintained here as personal information, as part of information objects. And then the privacy regulations that you're following, citations, controls, privacy policies, and risk statements that are specific to privacy aspects as such can be maintained as a library within the solution. Now, with that context, first step is to understand where does personal data live within the entire solution, right? That's exactly where, from a discovery point of view, privacy impact assessments and the discovery functionality would come into picture, where you can send privacy screening assessments to understand from a business process point of view or an application point of view, they're processing personal data. Or we can also, business users can also come into an employee portal and raise a brand new implementation request and submit a privacy impact assessment for it, or at regular intervals in case you wanted to send privacy impact assessments to understand how personal data is being processed for the existing set of records. Even that can be looked at. The beauty of this is when you send these privacy impact assessments, ultimately what you're doing is you're updating a record of processing activity or a processing activity record, which is the front and center for the privacy team to understand a given business process or a given business application and how and why it is processing personal data. Right. So this particular record is what is getting updated with the right set of details. And based on the assessment responses, we are applying controls, identifying the risks, managing control attestation process, and also managing the issues and policy exceptions that are specific to a given processing activity record in this case. That is one aspect where we are applying the risks and controls. However, for us to understand the risk posture, what we do is we have a two-level risk assessment aspects or process that we have introduced. And though this is configurable, the first aspect is whenever a processing activity gets treated or updated, what we can do is we can perform a criticality assessment to understand processing activity from a higher level aspect to see what is the criticality associated with it. If the criticality turns to be high, then we get into the next level of scrutiny that is trying to understand every risk that is associated with the processing activity and try to get the risk score or try to arrive at the risk score to understand what is the risk that is associated with the given processing activity, right? So it's like a two-step process for the critical processing activities that are identified out of criticality assessment. We get into the next level of details to go into further details as such, right? With that context, right? Let us look into some of the key functionalities that we have released.
So I've got actually a question for you, Pramod. I think you're probably going to be showing this, but I'll ask it anyway to kind of prompt you. Is there a capability in place or this plan to document and manage DPAs?
Sorry, can you come again?
Is there a capability in place, or is it planned to document and manage DPAs?
Yeah, so yes, definitely. We have a plan to have DPAs in as part of our roadmap, which is being planned. Yes, that is right.
Okay, awesome.
So
keep the questions coming, everybody. Keep the questions coming.
Yes. So, but all the privacy assessments what we have is kind of pretty much documented within the processing activity itself. So we can look into those aspects as well, right? So here are the highlights. But when we get into the depth of the details, right now you can map to a processing activity record specific risks, and these risks can be mapped automatically based on the privacy impact assessments or privacy assessments that are being responded by the business users, which means on a given business application or a process, when you send a privacy impact assessment and that gets responded, based on the responses, risks can be automatically applied on the processing activity where privacy team doesn't have to manually do this. But in a case where privacy team wants to review them in a manual fashion, we have additional functionalities on how easy for them to understand what risk that needs to be applied on a given processing activity based on the personal data that is getting processed as part of it, right? So we have specific reports for us to understand the criticality score. So we will get into the product and see some of these things. For that, I'm switching to my application right here. I logged in as Josh Warner, who is the privacy manager. And what I will do is I'll start the entire demonstration with the processing activity, and then I will come to the home page, which you're currently seeing, to get into more details on what we have from a home page and reports and dashboard standpoint. So for that, switching to the processing activity record and taking one of the application. Right. So this is the processing activity record, which has specific workflow associated with it. Right now, we are in the discover phase where we are trying to discover what kind of personal data that is getting processed, and we get to perform risk assessments at this point in time based on the data that is collected. Right now, these risk assessments can be performed by the level 1 or the business users by themselves or by the privacy team, and it can be purely configurable on how risk assessment needs to be performed. And again, these risk assessments pretty much can be automated as well based on the privacy response impact assessment responses that are coming in, right? Based on the privacy assessment responses that are coming in, pretty much these things can be automated. Right now, I'm going to show you in a more manual fashion, but pretty much these things can be automated as well. So with that said, let me, once the processing activity has the specific details, right, in this case, what is the purpose of this particular processing activity, where the data is being stored, and what kind of personal information that is getting stored as part of this particular processing activity. And with this kind of context, right, one of the things that we need to do is the criticality assessment, right, to understand what is the risk that is associated with this processing activity. Let's start with the criticality assessment. So I'm going to go here, trigger my criticality assessment. And when I take it, ultimately, I get into the risk assessment. So, okay, looks like there's already an assessment. Let me complete this quickly. Now, let me reinitiate. So I can perform multiple risk assessments on the same processing activity. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to initiate a brand new risk assessment, right? In this case, it is asking me where, who has to do this particular assessment, right? In this case, I'm saying for now, I'm just doing the assessment. But like I said, this can be an entirely an automated approach where we do not even have to perform a risk assessment. All the risk assessment related factors can be automated based on the privacy impact responses. So once I take the assessment right from here, I can get started. And if there is a previously submitted assessment, I can copy over the responses from there so that I can just review only those minimal changes. Right. As you may see here, there are various factors with which we are performing a risk assessment, right? There are regulatory factors, there are factors impacting data privacy and other factors. And right now you're seeing the scores based on the previous responses. However, we can modify them since we copied, or as a part of this particular demo step, I said, let's copy the previous results and then change the responses, right? We have various questions over here or factors over here asking about what is the process, whether this particular data processing activity is processing large set of data, right? And if you wanted to understand more details about this particular factor on what is this and what is the kind of answer that is expected here or the response that is expected here, here we have kind of help text provided where these kind of guidance would help with the users to perform the risk assessment as such. And in case I wanted to change this respective answer, I can click on the change answer and change as well, right? So various factors, and all of these factors are again configurable. You can add additional factors as you as per the needs. However, we have provided such as systemic monitoring which is being performed, or any automated decisions that is being taken, right? Sensitive data related aspects, right? And many other factors, as you see here, are kind of captured.
I think, you know, the thing about here, I think that's really exciting is the fact that it's built in. I mean, you got to this from the click of a button on the top right-hand corner, and then you're able to answer everything in this form.
Absolutely.
And it's very intuitive. And you also you have dependencies, don't you? It can answer it a certain way, it'll pop up other questions.
Abs-
Um,
Actually, yes. So basically what would happen is this is primarily the risk assessments that we are doing. So these are specific factors, not dependent factors. These are directly the factors that we are assessing. The dependent responses, what you're looking into is the kind of privacy impact assessments where we have, right? When we say that we are processing specific kind of data, then we might want to ask additional questions and responses, and that comes as part of privacy impact assessments. Here, these are specific factors that we are evaluating. So these are generally answers which are saying yes or no, or kind of high, medium, low, so that we understand the risk associated with the given processing activity.
Got it. But this is also configurable. I can add questions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can add questions. And let's say that you've sent a privacy impact assessment, which is capturing a response saying as a part of this particular processing activity, they're processing 1,000 plus employee data, right? Then this factor need not be manually selected at all. We have automated factors where it kind of selects all, it kind of does all the assessment in an automated fashion, and you get the scores by the time processing activity kind of gets updated with its privacy impact assessment response as such. So right now I'm showing in a manual fashion, but this entire assessment can be purely automated as well.
So we've got a couple of questions here. Is there a specific role that you need to have to answer these questions?
Absolutely. So we need an risk assessment responder role, and that role can be given to anyone within the organization, be it a business owner who is owning this particular processing activity or the application in the scenario, or it can be done by the privacy team where they can have their own approval levels. So it is up to the organization to decide how they wanted to take the workflow on this particular thing, and the role can come in handy to whom we need to assign that.
And another question here, the factors are customized. They understand the factors are customizable, but are there predefined factors available according to GDPR, or do you have to start from scratch? You do have a privacy, a template, I think, that you've built.
Absolutely.
To make available at the beginning.
Exactly. The current template, what you're seeing is the one that has been provided out of the box. And as well, this considers some of the factors coming from GDPR, from NIST framework, and few other regulations. And that's exactly where some of these factors are coming in as well. So that's where these regulatory factors are in place. And when we get into the financial factors impacting data privacy, this is more subjective aspect from a business user or a privacy analyst point of view, where they're saying the impact due to the legitimate use of national personal data is high here or low here, right? So these are some of the factors that we are shipping out of the box. What you're seeing right now is part of this demo. However, these things can be configured as well.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, that's sort of a standard practice with ServiceNow. You know, we do provide templates, but we understand that every organization is different, and every organization has different needs.
Absolutely.
So although we do provide something for you that that adheres to basic standards, we also have it flexible enough to be able to add your own questions.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, right. I think those are the two questions we've got so far.
Got it. Yeah, so these are some of the factors impacting data privacy, and there could be other factors that you might want to assess on, like financial impact or market impact and reputational impact. So based on that assessment, once this is done, then what we do is we do a control environment assessment, which means in this case, you're assessing your control environment in the context of this particular processing activity, understanding if the design effectiveness aspects or the operating effectiveness aspects, issue remediation process, right? So all of these things can be assessed, right? So what you're doing at this point in time is a risk assessment at the processing activity level, at the highest level. So this is where it is a criticality assessment, like a first level assessment or a top-down approach to arrive at a inherent and the residual scores for this particular processing activity, right? And once I review and submit it, we have the scores in place. And if we go to the processing activity from here, what we get is on the overview page, we get to see that the risk scores are kind of captured here. Now that we have the criticality score over here mentioned as high, now the next guidelines is to perform risk assessments for every risk that is associated with the processing activity. And this is where the entire risks relationship with the given processing activity would come into picture. You can add these risks right here, not in a manual fashion, but from an automated fashion as well. So as privacy assessments are getting submitted, for instance, let me take this particular assessment and talk about an example. So here is a assessment response that we are seeing, and every question when it is getting answered, we have configurations behind the scenes. For every value, we can map risks or controls or information objects, and based on that, the information objects or the risks or even the controls kind of get automatically mapped to the processing activity by responses, right? So privacy team doesn't have to do this activity in a manual fashion, they just have to review it. And while reviewing these things, right, let's say in this case, 18 risks have been identified for this given processing activity. And in case they wanted to see any other recommended risks, then we have risk recommendations as well. And these are coming from the mappings that we have with our information objects to the policies and risk statements and all of that, right? So we kind of give risk recommendations as well based on the information objects which are being governed by specific risk statements in this scenario. Now coming back, now that we have these many risks, and if you wanted to perform risk assessments on any of these particular things, that is where we can select all of them or select one of them and start assessing these risks. And again, these are specific to those roles that we talked about some time back, saying these things can be given even to the business user, the first line user, or can be performed by the privacy team and can have its own approval process with the due dates assigned to it, right? So once I take this particular risk assessment, then from the risk assessment, here are the risk assessments that are kind of available for me, and the data transfer related things, we can be assessed right from here. So let me quickly understand which is the one that I wanted to take. Let's refresh it, probably it is just getting created.
So while you're looking for this, we've got a couple questions here. And one of more of a comment, I think. So, someone has very astutely recognized this as the advanced risk assessment process that we introduced with risk or risk application about a year ago now, actually, a year and a half, possibly longer. It obviously is much more flexible. It is much more interactive, updates the scores as the data changes within the risk dashboard. So it's much more advanced, hence the name, than our previous risk assessment capabilities. If someone wanted to perform, the standard risk assessments that we used to perform previously, that's still available in the product, they would still be able to do that. The difference is that we've actually embedded or built in, like we saw from the click of a button at the top, the advanced risk capabilities, correct?
That is right. That is right. And the beauty of this particular functionality when it gets integrated with the advanced risk assessment is we have a capability to understand from the enterprise risk management point of view also to see what is happening on the privacy side of things, right? So in this case, privacy is not being worked on a siloed version where ARA or enterprise risk management or advanced risk management is being looked by enterprise risk team. And enterprise risk team now also has a visibility to the kind of risk assessments that are being taken by the in the context of privacy. And we're also looking at aspects such as a privacy team is not working things on a siloed fashion, but it is looking into aspects overall from an organization, enterprise risk, and as well as corporate compliance standpoint.
Yeah, I think it's the best of both worlds. You're holistically being able to manage risk across the enterprise, privacy Absolutely. With all of the risks you have, but you're also able to look at privacy very specifically and prioritize the privacy risks.
Exactly. So it gives the space for the privacy. It gives the space for the privacy team to manage their privacy compliance, but at the same time, it has the visibility to the enterprise risk team and as well as the corporate compliance team.
Yeah, we have another question that came in. I think it's when you were talking about the automated controls and such. but is there a dependency on business application table for use of recommendation engine, similar to what we have in the risk identification workflow?
Yeah, it's not a hard dependency. So we kind of look into the CMDB aspect today to kind of get access to, or to kind of assess which of those applications or which of those business processes or services that needs to be considered for privacy aspects. And that's how we create processing activities. But there's no hard dependency. Let's say these applications are not there as a part of CMDB repositories, then you can also directly import entities. And then from entities, you can create the processing activities and start managing them. So there's no hard dependency. If CMDB is populated with the inventory of business applications and processes, we can connect them. If not, the starting point would be entity records.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, looks like you found an inherent assessment here.
Yeah, so we've done a quick data transfer assessment, and what we're seeing here is assessment of this particular risk in the context of HR onboarding application, and we are seeing what is the impact and likelihood. And when we get to the controls here, we get to see what are all the mitigating controls that are mapped to this particular risk, and it is an automated factor. So this is one of the factors which is automated, where you see that there are one non-compliant and two compliant controls which are applied as a mitigating controls for this risk. Based on that, the control effectiveness is kind of calculated automatically, and we are getting an overall response right here itself. So this particular assessment is given out of the box, where you will be able to make use of the privacy risk assessments and assess the risks individually given to the processing activity. And ultimately, when you come back on the processing activity, right here we have the compliance posture, but if we go to the risk overview, we get to see things from a single processing activity point of view to see what is the criticality score, how each and every risk that is associated with this processing activity is kind of performing from an inherent score and residual score point of view. So from inherent, what we have seen is we have 5 risks which are in critical nature, but when we go to the residual, we kind of get to see the residual map as well. And these are purely configurable, whether you want to have it 3x3 or 4x4 or 5x5 metrics, all of these heat maps can be configurable. And it also highlights over here critical risk which doesn't have any controls, right? Which is even more worrisome for us, right? So there are certain reports which would help you to understand the criticality score, the risks that are doesn't have mitigating controls and all of that right here.
Wonderful. We got a couple of questions. So the first one is, is the full GRC suite needed to access entities, or can GRC profiles be provided if we want to use privacy without the GRC policy, control, risk, BCM applications? I know the answer to that, but I'm going to let you answer it.
Sure, Teresa. Yeah, so privacy is an add-on on the existing IRM suite. So minimum requirement for privacy is policy and compliance or IRM standard. So that is where it would start, and then you can have privacy either on Pro or Enterprise, but minimum requirement is standard. Now, when I say IRM standard as the minimum requirement here, we know that the risk management aspects, whatever we are seeing here, are coming from advanced risk assessments module. When advanced risk assessment module is only available in IRM Pro, right? So that doesn't mean privacy needs to, with risk assessment capability, need to have IRM Pro is not a constraint. So if we install privacy along with IRM standard as the minimum requirement, risk assessment capability for the usage of privacy will come along with the privacy SKU as such, or along with the privacy product as such. So
yeah, we just to make it simple for people, so they're not having to buy something they don't need. I mean, trying to meet the customer where they're at is what we're trying to do. Another question, you've been showing information objects here on and off. Can you spend some time, and you might be doing this coming up, on the sample content captured in the information object?
Absolutely. So on the information objects, So here are all the information objects which have been categorized as personal information. But when I go to one of these information objects, right? Let's say I take this one. Again, these are quite configurable. We can add additional fields and all of that. But we get to see what is the sensitivity that is associated with it, right? And which business unit started this particular or kind of have a need for this particular information object, which are all those processing activities that are processing such a kind of personal information, right? All of those things are right here. And also if we go to the 360-degree view right from here, for us to understand this particular information objects in more detail. So what would happen is for this particular information object, how many processing activities we said, and also the risk statements that are associated with, right? If there are policies, if there are citations, even those things would get kind of showed up right here. So the beauty of this is, in a case where if we identify that there is a regulatory change coming in for a given information object, we know the impacted citations, policies, risk statements, and processing activities, right? So if I take another example, just to show that, if I go to the list view, let me take a simple example, customer email, and bring up the 360-degree view right here. Now here you see that this particular information object is associated with a citation, policy, and risk statement, which means whenever there's a change for a specific information object, we get to see the impacted areas. Like there are 11 processing activities, and as well as there are specific citations, policies, and risk statements associated with this information object.
And I think this is really powerful because, I mean, as we all know, regulations are constantly evolving, they're constantly changing, there's new regulations being added. You know, the ability to proactively identify when a regulation is going to impact a certain information object and ultimately your privacy posture, I think is so powerful. And everybody loves this 360-degree view. I love it because it's got everything in one place. And you can see all the interdependencies.
Absolutely. Yeah. So going back to the presentation, we spoke about risk assessments and as well as the ARA limited, right? That's exactly where privacy management is being shipped with ARA limited capability. So you do not need to have IRM Pro to use risk assessment capabilities or ARA risk assessment capabilities with privacy management. Pretty much you can use with, you can perform risk assessments on an IRM standard as a minimum requirement for privacy application. Yes. Now let's get into the other aspects, right, from a overall product point of view. And one of them is recommended controls. So what we have seen previously is recommended risks, right? So if I go to one of my processing activity again, under controls, what we have provided is recommended controls again. And how these recommended controls are coming in, like I said, the information objects we have seen, these are mapped to citations, these are mapped to policies. And based on those mappings and when it is associated with a business application in this scenario, we are recommending what are the additional citations or related controls, or additional controls related to policies that needs to be added. All of those things are coming right from here. In addition to that, what we also have is the key stakeholders, right? So we have introduced key stakeholders who are where we are kind of capturing what all the other important business users whom we need to know who are working or having an ownership on this particular processing activity, right? So there might be IT application owners, there might be business owners, there might be executives who might be owning this processing activity from various responsibilities point of view, right? So that's exactly where key stakeholders would come into picture. And the beauty of having key stakeholders is not only from a record point of view that we are kind of having these users, but now when we are sending a privacy assessment, we also get to understand to whom I can send a privacy assessment, right? This could be in an automated way or it can be in manual fashion, but it will give us the ability to send specific assessments to the right people so that from a technical assessment point of view or from functional assessment point of view, if we wanted to segregate the privacy impact assessments, then we can target the right people right here itself. That is one benefit or an additional benefit of key stakeholders. The other benefit is this, right? Let's assume I wanted to collect a few more details on the processing activities, right? There are specific data that needs to be updated on the information objects or on the details. So instead of sending privacy impact assessment, what I can do is I can directly assign this particular processing activity to one of the key stakeholders who has the privileges to edit the processing activity, right? I can directly send this to Val in this case. And once I assign it, as you see, the substate would change to pending key stakeholder updates. And now if I log in as Val as a business user, I will be able to see the processing activity and update the details which are needed, right? And privacy team can also communicate with them using the comment section right here. So when I go to Val's login, looks like I got logged out. Let's quickly log in this scenario.
So can you, you're sending it to Val, but if you had 2 or 3 people you wanted to send it to, could you send it to a group also?
We can send the processing activity to one person at a time. Yeah, we can only send processing activity to one person at a time.
And I think that
basically
makes sense. Yeah.
To avoid any kind of conflicts, right? From an updates point of view, it's only being sent to one particular person at this point.
And the key stakeholder needs to be a business user, right? I mean, is it
absolutely? Yeah, key stakeholders are the business users, and it is also being updated by the business users itself, right? We have an entity owner who would start as a first identified key stakeholder, and from then on, this particular key stakeholder can provide other key stakeholders for a given processing activity who needs to be participating in the entire privacy activities with the privacy team as such. So here is the employee center view. So now we have a brand new employee center view for the business users, where they get to see all the tasks consolidated right here. So here is the GRC tasks from which I can access the processing activities that are assigned to me. So like I said, I've logged in as well. Right here, I have all my tasks open. So from here, I can go to processing activities that are assigned to me. As you see, even attestation or issues, all of those things kind of shows up right here. But this is the one that has been assigned to me by Josh, who's the privacy manager. And I can get to the details, I can get to the information objects and start providing the missing information, which has been communicated by the Josh using comment section right here, right? So all of these things can be pretty much edited by the business user itself. So we don't have to send privacy impact assessments in specific scenarios where we need additional details or anything. We can directly send the processing activity and get these details. And once the details are kind of provided, like I said, even key stakeholders can be added or updated based on the roles that are getting changed with respect to this processing activity. And once these updates are done, it can be assigned back to the privacy team, and privacy team would be able to start looking at those changes. And from the history, we also kind of know what kind of values that are being modified, and privacy team can look into those to understand what kind of risk and control implications are there based on the updates that were given.
So streamlining the process. You're making it faster, easier.
Absolutely.
Always better.
Yeah. So going back, we spoke about sending multiple assessments to key stakeholders, assigning the processing activity to key stakeholder itself, and 360-degree view, like I said, right? Exactly, right from here, I can launch the 360-degree view, as we used to see before. Now it also shows you the risks that are associated with the processing activity, along with the information objects, right? Upstream and downstream processing activities. And from here, we can navigate to the basically to the information objects and try to understand what kind of relationships that this particular information object has. With that,
fantastic.
Yeah, let's talk about some of the discovery related functionality that we have added. We know that we have privacy assessments that can be sent at the entity level to get more to understand if the business applications or processes are processing personal data or not. But in addition to that, what we have done right now is we have provided a portal form for the business users to come and proactively raise a privacy impact assessment for the new implementation that they are thinking, right? In this case, let's assume there is no CMDB record, they've not created an entity, but they are just in the initial phases of creating a brand new application or a business process. then they can come to the portal and submit a request. So let's quickly see how this entire flow would look like. So I'm going to Val's Employee Center, where I have risk and compliance tab right here, from which I can access privacy impact assessments for the new implementation or the initiative that I'm looking at, right? So at this point in time, like I said, there is no CMDB record or business application record or a business process record. So I'm just filling some of the details here on what I'm thinking about for a new application. Let's say this is account payables is a process. And I'm selecting what kind of information, that personal information that I will be processing as part of this. I'll be processing customer bank account, probably I'll be processing customer email, and right. And if some details are missing, I can also capture those things here, saying, let's say, customer home. So these things pretty much can be typed here. So full name. Right, we can add the information objects that are being processed as part of this particular, or are being thought through, right, as part of this particular new business process that is being initiated. So I can provide the justification and say that this is part of which business unit, and further down, is part of which department, whom are we processing here as data subjects, customers, right? Data storage type is going to be in a digital format. Data subject range might be beyond specific limit. And I can fill in all the details like data storage locations and additional comments, and I can submit this. So as a business user, I'm just submitting a brand new application request, or in this scenario, for privacy team to understand what am I coming up with and how things would be. And then I can also say that any happy to help with additional info, right? I can post comments to the privacy team as well right from here. So what would happen is for the privacy manager, when I go to his login and start looking at aspects on the home page, we get to see a brand new processing activity kind of recorded right here. As you may see here, account payables is kind of right here. And as a privacy manager, I can review it, looking into the details. If you see, you got the justification, we know which business unit this is being referred to, some of the details, and also we are looking into information object related details. So we can also, as a privacy team, we can also interact with the business users right from here, saying happy to schedule a call and post the comments. And these comments are pretty much only visible to privacy team and business users. Any privacy team conversations will be maintained private, right? So if I go to Val's screen, Val can also get the comments that are being posted by the privacy team. Also, and emails are being sent in parallel as well on these interactions. Right. So that's how we can create, and from here you can assign the processing activity, or you can send a privacy impact assessment based on the process that you have defined to understand more details about this particular processing activity as such.
Yeah, and I think that interaction, being able to just be able to interact, is so helpful, because you get your questions answered right away. And I think if people haven't figured it out already, you know, that employee center that Pramod was showing you, that, I mean, that is sort of your central control panel. It's not just privacy. You can enter risk events, you can acknowledge policies. I mean, that you've got IT, you'll have legal. Absolutely. All the different departments can be on this one portal. So this is becoming for a user, you know, this is the place to be. A business user, it's a place to be.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what I wanted to touch upon next, saying that this is the place where I can come and I can look at what are the privacy specific assessments that I need to take, right? And what kind of control attestations that has been given to me. So it is that front and center for the business team to come and look for all the kind of tasks that has been assigned to them And in any other request that they need to raise, be it a privacy impact assessment for a new implementation or report an issue, policy exception. So this is the front and center for the business team to start interacting with the GRC team. And here, not just from a GRC point of view or IRM point of view, even other solutions from ServiceNow kind of come here as a consolidated list.
Yeah, this is becoming, it's not replacing the ticketing portal for the ITSM, but for a business user, this is becoming the place that we're pulling everything together, consolidating across ServiceNow. Absolutely. So that's I think it's very helpful.
Yeah. So moving on, so we spoke about assessments and as well as the portal capabilities, and from then on, if we go further down, let's look into the homepage side of things, right? So once all of these details are filled and there are various processing activities that we have collected, ultimately what we are looking at here is the posture, privacy posture from a risk aspect, from a compliance aspect, and that's exactly where the compliance overview is there, month on month, showing you how the entire trend report would be with respect to the compliance posture. And as well as the overall control status across various controls and how many are compliant and non-compliant. And the other new report that we have added is the most non-compliant control objectives. Now, here, the whole idea is to see things from a control or a control objective point of view and understand what is that one control objective which is kind of impacting 10 processing activities, which means these are the 10 processing activities where this particular control objective is kind of non-compliant, right? So now privacy team is looking into these aspects from a different perspective, not from a processing activity point of view, but from a control objective point of view to understand what is that most troublesome or the non-compliant control objective that I need to work on to fix quickly around multiple processing activities, right? In a very similar fashion, we have the entire authority documents and policies related status across various controls that are applied right here. And moving forward with respect to risk management aspects, here we get to see the critical risks, processing activity, criticality, processing activities with criticality score as high, right? Those things kind of shows up here. And again, very similar to the control objectives, the report that we have seen. Here are the risk statements which are rated high, right? So this is that one risk statement which is kind of rated high across 3 processing activities, which means now privacy team can start looking into this particular risk statement and try to help the processing activity owners to reduce the risk on this particular one.
I think it's the being able to we're prioritizing for you the risks that are the greatest impact to your business, and I think that's where the value is you're not having to analyze it yourself. We are giving it to you. Absolutely,
that's the whole intent. Moving forward on the processing activities, we have various reports based on the data that we have. So ultimately, it is like how many data subjects are we dealing with and how it is like divided, right? Data storage types and even data category wise, how many general personal data we're processing, so special category data. So ultimately getting into the processing activity specific reports. And we spoke about regulatory changes, right? So this is where the regulatory change management integration is coming as part of this particular release, right? So here we get to see the regulatory changes that are specific to privacy authority documents as such. So when we have the regulatory change integration, which is available as from IRM Pro onwards, if there are specific regulatory tasks that are identified, which are mapped to authority documents, which are of type privacy, then we get to see those related things right here, and privacy team can concentrate on the filtered work rather than looking into the overall regulatory changes, which might be quite huge in nature. So that's on the regulatory change aspect. Now we spoke about privacy team, their reports, their dashboards, and all of that, right? But what if I am a compliance manager, right? So if I go to a compliance manager's workspace, what I get to see is from an overall compliance manager point of view, I'm looking at various regulations. At the same time, I have a quick report right here talking about the overall privacy posture, right? Which means as a corporate compliance person, where I'm looking into overall compliance and their posture, I get to see the entire privacy posture right from here. I navigate to the dashboard and see things as well. This is another integration aspect, saying that privacy is not seen from a siloed product, but also has a visibility to the overall IRM suite of aspects. In a very similar fashion. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and in a very similar fashion,
everything is interrelated. I mean, it's not, you know, this is not a siloed product. It's part of an overall compliance and risk program.
Absolutely. And if I log in as one of the risk manager, right? That's in this case, I'm logging in as a risk manager. Even over here, I get to see privacy specific posture, right? So let me go to the workspace, this workspace right from here.
And that drop down menu that we just saw up there at the top is actually part of the new user interface that we have for several of our products at ServiceNow and several of our GRC products. Absolutely.
So in this case, a risk manager is the one who has access to some of these particular workspaces, and they can always switch between the workspaces, right? So, but in general, they primarily come to this workspace, and from here, I can understand what is the privacy risk assessment posture, right? What are all the risks that have been assessed, and how the entire posture is right here, saying which are all the high risks and the overdue tasks and the risk statements related ones and the scores. All of those things are visible to the enterprise risk manager right from here itself, right? So that's exactly where the power of shared libraries and the power of privacy team working in their space, but at the same time, enterprise risk management team is also connected, corporate compliance team is also connected, and trying to look into privacy from an overall IRM point of view is where coming together.
Absolutely. We have one question about processing activities, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Can users document subprocessors that support certain processing activities?
Absolutely. So let me log in as the privacy manager here. Once again, go back to. So every processing activity can be kind of documented, and it can be related, right? And that too related in the context of when we say sub-process in the context of information object sharing aspect, right? So when I go to HR onboarding, we can say that these are all the personal data that is being processed, and how this personal data records are being shared from an upstream processing activity and the downstream processing activity point of view, right? How am I getting this data, right? So that's exactly where we have processing activities kind of connected from a hierarchical fashion to understand the data flow. And this is where the sub-processes, in this case, for this particular processing activity, these are the sub-processes. And this processing activity is acting as a sub-process for another application right here, right? So that's how we can associate or kind of maintain the hierarchy to understand the overall data flow in the context of processing activities.
Perfect. Thank you.
Excellent. So with that, we have looked at some of these reports, risk overview, and overall processing activity specific reports, regulatory change management, quite an important thing for us to understand, because this is something that in the privacy world, regulations are changing drastically. So having such a report is going to help customers a lot. And then information objects, right? Information objects aspect, where we are not just having information object which is associated with the processing activity, but also it has its own context on what kind of citations or policies or statements governing this particular information object, and also impacted processing activities that are coming out of it and all of that, right? So those are some of the critical enhancements that we have released as part of San Diego version as such. Open for questions, and yeah, that's all from me for today.
I don't have any other questions on the list right now, but everybody, please, we've got about 6 minutes left. Please put your last questions in here. I'm going to skip over and just share very briefly our, there we go. some of the places where you can find more information. Hopefully you're seeing my screen that says connect with us. Please, you can find us on the ServiceNow product site, on the community. And I put in the chat the link to the Ask the Experts playlist on YouTube. I don't see any other questions in the list right now. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I really appreciate you taking the time. And Pramod, I really appreciate you taking the time and walking us through the product. So thank you very much also.
Thank you, Teresa, and quite excited for you guys to try the product, and let me know in case you need any help from my side. Happy to.
Wonderful. All right. We hope to see you in some of the next and upcoming webinars that we've got. And with that, I will bid you farewell and have a wonderful day or evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.